Hey everyone, this is Leatherass with DragTheBar.com. Today I'm playing two tables of 2-4 no limit, 6 max on PokerStars. Right now I start off, I got a hand King 8 offsuit in the big blind, facing a late position raise. I don't really like any of my options other than simply just folding straight away here. I feel like folding is the best option. The other two would be calling or re-raising, and calling with a hand like King 8 offsuit out of position is most certainly going to be a loser, and re-raising is probably the better option, just because you can take the pot down by sheer aggression a lot of the times. But in any event, I still think it's not a good play as well. So folding it is. Here with Ace-6 offsuit, I'm going to go ahead and open. He's a little short stacked, so I'll make it a little less than 3 times the blind. Let's make it 10. And first order of business when I'm at a table after I fold this hand, which is not strong enough to call, is to mark the players I perceive as weak. And from my experience, if you're not either a short stacker, which is someone with 20 blinds, which we're all hoping these people don't exist much longer, because well, I think there's kind of a consensus on that, unless you are one of the short stackers. But in any event, unless you're a short stacker or a full stacker with like a guy with $400 here at the 2-4, if you just have a stack that's kind of in between, chances are you're just a recreational player looking to have some fun, not really concerning yourself too much with what exactly you buy in for. So here I'm going to make it 5 times the big blind with Jack-7 offsuit. I have a limper in the pot, Snyder 1, and against limpers I usually just try and take it down. They don't seem too strong to me when they just limp in. And if I don't take it down pre-flop, I attempt to take it down virtually always with a little more than a half pot bet on the flop, and we'll hope we can take it down, and we certainly do. So, you know, the theory basically being that they're not too strong if they just limped in, so you raise it to basically isolate them to where you can play just them. They're a weaker opponent. Also, that they probably don't have a big hand, and then that big hand is probably not, if they do call pre-flop, is probably not going to connect on the flop too well, too often, and so you can typically take it down with a bet. And then if you do happen to a bet on the flop, and if you do happen to flop a strong hand, well then you know, maybe you can get a chance to win a stack, which is kind of fun. So Jack-9 offsuit, more towards the bottom end of the hands I'll open on the button, but strong enough. And here with the King-Queen, I'm just going to go ahead and open as well, and certainly a reasonable enough hand. And here on this flop here, we're going to hope that it didn't connect with this hand. Probably isn't going to very often, and it doesn't look like it did. And so we'll also mark him as a weaker opponent. Now this Chief Gordo, I still don't know if he's a short stacker or if he's just a guy that just put in a small amount of money. But it looks like we have a couple weak opponents, and that's really mission critical here when you're playing poker. I've talked about it a lot in my book, Treat Your Poker Like a Business, and what I really go into a lot is you have to have weaker players at the table. A lot of people will try and tell you, like, oh, you should play stronger players, and you know, oh, what are you, a wussy? Like, you know, why aren't you playing these? You know, why aren't you willing to just take on all comers? And I don't know about you, but I mean, I enjoy poker, but there are things I would rather be doing than playing poker. Most certainly, I enjoy golf. I enjoy, you know, hanging out with friends, etc. And if I'm playing poker against only really good players, there's no edge in that. I mean, we're all basically, you know, good players at that point, and we're just kind of passing money around and paying, you know, approximately a 5% rake for the privilege. And so I liken it to opening up a you know, a grocery store and paying $1 for an apple and selling it for 95 cents. It just doesn't make sense. You're not going to stay in business that way. I assume, you know, we all enjoy poker, but you know, again, there are things we'd rather be doing. We're here in it primarily to make money. And how do you make money? Well, you need to have players who you have edge on at the table. And if you don't have edge, then you know you're basically you've just made yourself a recreational player, because that's what you are. You're playing recreationally because there's no money in it. You know, you might win money 5 sessions in a row, but you're not going to make money in the long run off of people who are all really good poker players. If everyone's pretty much equal ability, there's no money in it. So here at the deuce 9 suited, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. There was a raise made, I believe, by Big Fred a couple hands ago as I was talking about that concept, and he opened and I folded ace 6. For those who were kind of wondering if that was maybe a playable hand or not, I don't try and get involved with weak offsuit aces facing pre-flop raises, especially not from early position, and especially when I have to play those people out of position. It was a clear fold to me. So we pick up queens on table 2, and again, table 1 would be, it's just like you're reading a book, so table 1's on the left, table 2's on the right, and we're going to go ahead and 3-bet the queens, and we're certainly willing to get all the money in pre-flop if that's what he's going to tell us we have to do. And here at the ace-king, I'll go ahead and re-raise as well. And both hands I'll be willing to go with post-flop, so, or excuse me, pre-flop. And here with the queens, this, you know, it's a blessing and a curse to flop a hand this strong. There's just not much he can have. I don't, you know, I'm not a big fan of checking. I don't mind making sort of a weak lead and kind of making it tough for him to do anything other than just, you know, tough for him to fold. It would just be a little too tempting for him. And here with the ace-king, you know, unless he flops 6s or 8s or a flush draw, which, or excuse me, a flush, I should have the best hand. And so I'm just going to go ahead and proceed as if I have the best hand and be willing to stack off. I think if he check raises me, a lot of the times I'll be getting it in with, you know, an ace-queen with a queen of hearts or something like that I have some equity on. So, and you know, after I bet the flop, there's just become so much money in the pot, I don't think I can really get away from it if he check raises. So it would be debatable. It's not going to be a fun spot if he check raises, that's for sure. But guys these days will check raise flops as bluffs. So you just can't really get away from a hand like that anymore. And so I get minimum check raised with the 8-9. This is one of those spots where it's really not great, because if I ship it in now, I'm only going to get called by hands that have, you know, that have a ton of equity, like a king jack of hearts or something like that, and or hands that just already have me beat, 10-9, pocket 10s, 8s, 9s, queen jack, 6-7. So I'm gonna be willing to get all the money in, but only on a safe turn card. So I'm gonna call the turn, and that's definitely, I mean, that's a total brick. There's no way that helped his hand. It only helped a hand like 10-5, I suppose. And so I don't really know what, you know, he's made an awkward bet on the turn. You know, I don't know if he did just flop the mortal nuts like queen jack and he just feels like he's trying to milk me, or what he's trying to do. I could shove, I could also call. If he does have a really big hand and he's willing to just make small bets because he doesn't want to lose action, that's an argument for me calling as well. So this is a pretty close one between just shipping and trying to force out some of the draws, or at least give him a bad price, or just calling. I think I'm actually going to continue to kind of keep this pot small and just call. And so we got another brick more or less on the river, and I don't see any value in raising, and I'm not going to fold. Although I'm not, you know, thrilled at this point. I don't think I'm going to be good every time here by any means, but often enough, I believe, to show a profit. Wow, so I definitely look a little foolish there. The 5-10 was the only way that 5 could have helped him on the flop, so yeah, that's just pretty bad. So here at the Jack-10, I'm just going to check call a bunch. I can't really go anywhere on a flop like that. It's not a ton of value in, you know, check raising or leading out to try and protect my hand. There's just, you know, queen, king, and ace, they're scare cards, but I'll still have outs to even those hands. So, and even if he actually did make one of those bigger pairs, he might also queen king or ace would come on the turn, and then I call him, and it turns out he's just bluffing. So it's not always a bad thing when overcards come. Here he's just a little too short for me to isolate, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold the king 6 suited. So a little bit of a bummer with the 10-5. I mean, that was the only way the 5 could have helped him on the turn is if he had exactly 10-5, which was a pretty unlikely hand to be check raising that flop, I would think. So these are the guys that you want at your table. Trust me. This is that was pretty funny. So here with the ace-4 offsuit, again, don't get involved with those hands out of position. Not a winning play, so I just folded outright. So with the ace-deuce of spades, if I'd known that was going to be the flop, maybe I would have called, but other than that, I don't think it was a winning play. He's pretty tight. 12-11 are his numbers. Truthfully, I don't even know what the rest of the numbers mean. I don't really use HUDs too much. I kind of put it up here for the video, and sometimes if I have a new opponent, I might want to glance real quick and see what his pre-flop, his VPIP, which is voluntary put in pot, which is the number on the left, which is 12 for no bluff on table 1, or excuse me, it's 13 now, it just updated, and the pre-flop raise is 12, and so sometimes when I face a new opponent, I'll glance at those numbers just to kind of see what he's running like, but I don't use HUDs very often. I really don't. I kind of despise them in a lot of ways. I mean, I like them, and I think they're a good tool, and I think for a lot of other people, they're an excellent tool. For me, not so much, because I just don't even understand how to use it, and I'm just a more intuitive player anyway. I've messed around with this stuff, and the main problem I have with HUDs is that they give you a lot of general information. Here at the King 4 suited, I opened. I made only two times the blind for this reason, because when the short stack shoves, I don't want to make a bigger pot for him to take down by shoving. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold. So I risk less to try and steal the blinds. So in any event, circling back to Holdem Manager, the reason why I don't use it very often, and I don't, I'm not in love with it, is that it gives you a lot of general information. So a good example is like, it might say, XYZ player check raises the flop 32% of the time, or I'm just throwing out a random number. Okay, so he check raises 32% of the time, generally speaking, but when he plays me, maybe he, doesn't check raise at all, or he only check raises when he has monster hands, because he gives respect to better players, but he check raises weaker players all the time. That's just a off the top of my head example, but the point is like, I might then use that number and go, hey, so and so. Same concept here with the ace-5. I don't want to get all the money with ace-5, so and so I'm just going to fold outright. I don't want to risk having to get all the money, because if I make it 20, then I'm going to have to get the money in. But getting back to what I was saying about Holdem managers, in that case, when the guy check raises me, I might be going like, oh man, this guy check raises 33% of the time. Like, he can't have a hand very often. I better, I better play top pair like the nuts against this guy. And as it turns out, he's been giving me some respect, or other, good players at the table respect, but he's check raises, the average guy or the recreational player, every other time, and so it's kind of skewed the numbers, and so now I'm playing as a weak hand strongly based on information that's not even accurate against me. So that's a lot of my beef against it. If they ever refine the software to where they could show what people do against specific players, I'd pay $1,000 for a copy of that. So here with the threes, I get called by a short stacker. A lot of times they're just trapping with big hands here, and I don't have any equity when behind, any substantial equity if he has a jack or a king, and so I'm actually just going to give up on this flop. When a short stacker just calls like that in position with a bunch of players left to act, it's going to definitely make you wonder if they're just trapping with a big hand. So I gave him a little credit there. And my hand wasn't good anyway. I mean, it may have been the best hand, I don't know, but it wasn't a very good hand, let's say that. So, Holdem Manager is obviously a great tool. I talked about it in my book. It's absolutely a great tool, and I still recommend everyone have it. At the very least, it's an excellent tool to track, just to track your wins and losses and stuff like that. And so it's clearly a no-brainer purchase. But and I'm kind of a rare one too. And the things that I'm talking about, that's not most people's feelings. I want to be clear about that. Most people just love it, and I don't fault them for that. That's certainly a reasonable thing to feel, in my opinion. It just, for me personally, it's not the end-all be-all. So here at the Queen 6, I'll go ahead and open. Real close. I could fold, I could open, but he's kind of a weaker player, so I don't mind playing him some pots with him. And here at the Queens, I guess probably I maybe should have opened for 2 times the big blind because there's a short stacker involved, but I just made it 12 out of habit, I guess you should say. So I get re-raised, and so I'm just going to kind of make a small 4-bet back, and I'll certainly get all the money. And I think he's a pretty aggressive player. I've heard of his screen name before, so I'll just re-raise and get all the money in happily. In a blind battle, queens are the nuts, or at least you should play them that way. Now, it's possible what I just said is inaccurate at a super low stake, passive sort of limit. Maybe people only get it in with like kings and aces at those limits or something. I don't have enough experience, admittedly, at those games. I do know that at any sort of limit where you're, mid stakes or even probably low stakes, I would imagine in a big blind, or excuse me, a button big blind battle, you couldn't go too wrong getting all the money with queens. So here at the 5s, I'm going to make it 2 times the blind because the short stacker, and we get called by the small blind. And squeezed by the big blind, which doesn't surprise me too much. I did just 4-bet recently, which I don't know if he's noticed that or not. I think I'm going to go ahead and give him a little 4-bet back, and we'll just try and take it down right now. We're just basically turning our hand into a bluff, because I think it was pretty predictable he would squeeze a lot here. I mean, not every time, but he's going to squeeze often enough to where I can re-squeeze him profitably. And wow, that certainly wasn't expected. You would think in that case he would either fold or ship. And here with the 5s, this is one of the least fun spots in poker. This does not come up very often. I don't know what this means from this particular opponent. This could be aces. This could be 7. I would think a lot of times 7 through 10s. Maybe like an ace-queen type of hand. None of those hands are really looking like they're going to fold because they flop sets or straight draws, or they might have a big flush draw. I'm going to just take the prudent play, and I'm just going to check it back. And if he makes a bet on the turn, I'm just going to give it up. you know, one option is to make a really tiny bet on the flop, like $50, and just make him, you know, have to think about it, and you give yourself a really good price. Problem is like that flop's so brutal. I mean, if the flop was like ace-2-2, I would of course made a bet on the flop, but this flop, I mean, it just smacks his range right in the face. So I'm just going to give it up. For the record, calling pre-flop raises 4-bets like they're out of position is it's just not a good play. I see regulars do it, and I see them do it at reasonable limits, and I think it's just people trying to, they just want to get too involved, they want to outplay each other. It's that mentality of just, you know, try and outplay a guy at all costs, which you know, is both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, that's part of what makes a great player, is he's always looking for ways to outplay someone. But there is a fine line, and most people's problems at the mid-stakes and a lot of times the high stakes, the reason they're not making really any money in the long run is that they get too overly involved. They just take it that little bit too far, and they don't understand that you can't fight for every single pot. You have to have some judgment in there. And you know, I know the one thing that'll never cease to amaze me is you know, you go to a site like PokerTableRatings.com and you look at these guys and their results, and there are guys that I play against and I'm like, man, this guy's tough. Like, you know, he's got to have a pretty good win rate. And I'll look up their win rate and I'll see that the guy's made like, oh, I don't know, $70,000 this year, you know, or in the past year, I should say. And now, of course, you know, making $70,000 playing poker is a hell of an accomplishment, and not something I'm picking on. But for a high stakes player who plays a lot, who seems really tough to me, I would be thinking mid 6 figures, possibly, you know, high 6 figures to 7 figures a year. And you see guys that make $70,000, and I'm just like, you know, there's your answer right there. These guys are clearly not, they're tough, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're good. Or great, I should say. They're good, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're great at poker. Being tough is a nice compliment to get from your opponents, but if you ask high stakes regulars, they'd tell you I'm one of the least difficult high stakes players to play against, and I might get a little bit of flack for that, but the results have been there, and so I can't really logically understand their argument, you know, that would say I just don't think that there's a clear understanding yet of a lot of things, because, you know, if you're picking on someone that maybe makes, you know, a fair bit of money, then there must be something that person's doing, and so, you know, I'm saying this to you guys because I don't, more than anything, want people to get wrapped up in this ego battle that so many poker players get wrapped up in, and this desire to win pots at any cost. It's just not good for your game. It's not good for your win rate. It's hurting all the players that do it, and so, you know, who are otherwise extraordinarily talented at poker. So, you know, don't become one of those players, I guess, is my advice. And here at the Queen 5 offsuit, I'll just toss in a min raise. I mean, I'm risking 8 to win 6 immediately, which means that it doesn't need to work too super often to be profitable, just to make that little steal. And especially when you consider that I can often just make a, you know, 2/3 bet or half pot bet or something on the flop and take it down like you just saw there. So with the Ace-10 offsuit, as I was kind of rambling there, the short stacker kind of min raised, and Ace-10 is good enough. He was super short stacked to just go ahead and go with the hand. And this guy's obviously, you know, he's going to get it in really light, as we can see with the Jack-9 suited, and his numbers kind of indicated that to me anyway. So Ace-10 offsuit was certainly plenty of hand. So yeah, with regards to the last remarks on the players, I do want to clarify. I'm not trying to pick on people or toot my own horn or anything. I'm just trying to kind of logically solve this problem. I mean, there's obviously an extraordinary number of talented poker players, many of which are not making the type of money that, from my experience playing with them, they seem like really good, really tough players, yet the results aren't there. And so clearly there's a disconnect somewhere. And this is, I wrote a book, about it more or less. Treat your poker like a business. I mean, that's basically the key to making money in this game. Think of it as like, poker players being, think of it in terms of other sports. If you have a guy with just a lot of raw talent, maybe he's 7 feet tall and he can dunk and he's going to play basketball, but if he doesn't understand, and say he wants to monetize that, well, if he walks into the meeting and to sign a contract and they say, we're going to pay you 10 grand a year, and he signs it, well, he didn't monetize his abilities really well. So that's just kind of one example of where you can go wrong. There's just you got to understand the business side of what you're trying to do in order to achieve the results you want. So here at the nines, I can re-raise or I can just call, and I don't mind calling and letting Big Fred come along, and in case he's trapping with a hand that he wants to make a limp re-raise with. This will allow me to not over-invest too much by re-raising and then getting shoved on by Big Fred. So here at the King-9 offsuit, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. It's out of position. It seems maybe a little weak against just a min-raise, but and being in the big blind and all, but just out of position is not my favorite place to try and play profitable poker. So here at the nines, I get called pre-flop, or excuse me, I called pre-flop, Big Fred called, and the flop was just terrible. So I'm not going to mess with that board. All his hands, ace queen, ace king, ace jack, aces, tens, queens. I don't think he's betting kings and stuff like that. So and I don't think he's going to be bluffing into two people. So it seems really unlikely that I would have the best hand, like almost 0% chance I have the best hand, and then not a good enough chance that I could just raise him as a bluff to really take it down, because it hits his range so hard. So there's really, by default, no other option but to fold. Another way of putting it is, you get a guy that's 7 feet tall and he can dunk, and he can run, a 4-3-40 or something, and he doesn't understand the game, or maybe he doesn't understand how to play with teammates, or he doesn't understand the value of hard work or staying in shape, or just all the little things that go into basketball. I mean, basketball is not all about being 7 feet tall and running fast and knowing how to dunk and dribble. It's about 9 jillion other things that separate the guy that's playing hoops and with his buddies in the city league. Maybe he's that over-talented underachiever in his city league versus the guy in the NBA. Oftentimes it's just a lot of hard work and understanding and willingness to get along with teammates and stuff like that separates a ball player like that versus a guy that might be somebody that's playing in the city league and looks like the second coming when he's out there, but some reason he's not having anybody in the NBA look at him. So here this guy is kind of starting to open a lot. I think it's about time I kind of 3-bet him with the 6-9 suited. And you don't want to make a habit of this, but it's good enough to make a play with it, and you have position, it's suited, somewhat connecting. Here I don't really see any other option, but I'll just ship it in. I don't know what this means. I mean, is this him trapping with aces? Is this him with a drawing hand like king queen? I don't really know, but I'm just going to go ahead and ship it in and not give these hands a chance to outdraw me. I don't think I can get them too super bad. I'm gonna have a ton of outs even against aces. So or top set. So I guess now that was obviously the least amount of outs we could have. But hey, we got there. Backdoor to flush, and I guess we hit the straight. So that works kind of nice. That kind of stinks for him. But it's not like those things don't happen to all of us as well. So not going to feel too bad about it. But there's the value of suitedness right there. People underestimate suitedness because you're not going to hit a flush too often. But just having stuff like backdoor outs, that 4 or 5% of the time that those come in, and you scoop a pot that you wouldn't have, it's valuable and something to be considered. So here with the threes, he seems to be attacking most blinds. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet him, and we'll come off. We'll follow up with a 3-bet most certainly. He definitely looks like somebody who's keen to want to outplay. He's calling the raises here, and so I might take this one to town here, because I just it's going to be very unlikely that he's going to have a hand that withstand 3 barrels there. So if he wants to be calling with hands like ace-9 and calling 3-bets there with ace-10 and these marginal type of hands, I want to make him. I want to put him to the test. So on that type of board, I think if I fired flop, turn, and river, I think he's going to have to lay down at some point, probably on the turn, but most certainly by the river. And so I was planning on just firing flop, turn, and river there, and obviously it'd be nice if I can spike a 3 along the way, but if not, I'm pretty confident I was going to take it down a decent percentage of the time. So here at the ace-4 suited, again, he's pretty active. They're mostly min raises. I'd rather be 3-betting him more when I have some position on him, and I don't want to 3-bet him back-to-back hands right now. So I'm just going to just fold. So here at the sevens, I'm going to go ahead and make a raise here, and 10-3 suited I'm going to just fold outright. So I wonder if Chip Phage is going to be leaving table. He just left table 2. I wonder if he's leaving table 1, or he might be practicing game selection, which I would take my hat off to him. The game that I'm here on the right is not super good, but he was able to, he has a seat here in position on Big Fred, so that's worth staying for, certainly. So we'll hope that this game doesn't fall apart. If it does, I can tell from the lobby. I can pretty easily grab another one. So it won't be a big deal if it does, although it's nice to kind of develop reads in the videos and get a little bit more into that as the video progresses. So here's what I was talking about earlier, how short stackers just start to overrun the games. I mean, this isn't poker anymore. This is like, this is people playing off of an all-in or nothing game, and there's no poker being played here. So this is definitely kind of frustrating, and but that's okay. I'm gonna find another table real quick. Unfortunately, a lot of the tables also have a lot of short stackers. So we're going to try and find something that has some more full stack play. So we're going to move in here at this table. So this one's pretty good. We got at least, you know, one full stack and two, like, you know, 2/3 stack guys, and they both seem probably pretty weak. And based on what I was telling you before, if your opponent has you know, sort of a stack that's not a short stack or a full stack, it's pretty darn likely that he's just buying in for a random amount, just looking to have fun. Certainly when a guy posts the big blind under the gun, that's a good sign. Actually, I don't ever recommend posting the big blind except in rare situations, and this is one of them. I'm going to post just because I think this guy's probably going to check, and I can just go ahead and raise and try and isolate him. And if he doesn't, I might just 3-bet him too, if he makes a small raise. So, I'm just going to try and take it down here, and here with the king 8, make a half pot bet and just try and take it down as well. So that's why I posted right there. I just wanted to basically try and pick up that money. And Big Fred shoved, and I've got king high, so I'm out ahead. So typically, yes, you don't want to ever post the blind until it's your turn. That's probably the #1 sign of a poor player is you know, posting the big blind under the gun in the least profitable, or you know, spot that you can get dealt cards, and he willingly put in money. So, you know, that's a pretty obvious mistake. And here with king 8 deuce, really unlikely he's going to have a hand, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a little more than a half pot bet, and hope to just take it down right here, which we do. King 8 deuce, you know, there's just not a whole lot of hands that really like those flops. And a lot of the hands that would like those flops would maybe have just shoved all in pre-flop if it was a hand like king queen or ace king or pocket 2s or pocket 8s, stuff like that. So I wasn't really worried whatsoever that that continuation bet wouldn't work. So here at the jack 10, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I would maybe call in position there if there was a really weak player left to act that had, you know, a full stack or something, but that wasn't the case here. So. So here, this is pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, I'm going to raise, and if somebody ships, I'm going to get it in. So we'll go ahead and make it like 50 bucks. You know, usually I like to squeeze to, you know, around 3 to 4 times their bet. So we take it down, and we should definitely note that we've, you know, as these guys have just sat, or as we've just sat at the table, we've taken down a couple pots without showing our cards. So people might be getting a little more suspicious. There might be a, you know, we might expect to get paid off a little more if we do happen to make a hand here. And here against this min raise, I'm just going to go ahead and just raise them back a little over 3 times. It's not a great hand, but oftentimes min raises don't mean much from the button. So we take it down there. So king 9 suited, good enough hand to open with on the button, and we've been really active here. We played 75, raised 75% of the pots. We're up $44 at the table without doing anything other than just basically making some raises. So, you know, people are probably getting to where they might want to stand up a little, but I'm not going to let that slow me down just yet. I've got a half decent hand here with Jack 10 offsuit, and I've got a, you know, I'm just going to continue to kind of steal the pots. So we're basically just running over this table right now, but good time to get dealt deuce 3 and just take a little break. So if you looked at my numbers right now, you'd be like, oh man, I can't wait to get to this table and play this leather-ass 9 clown with his 83 VPIP and his 83 pre-flop raise. This guy's out of control. So, you know, we just have to kind of pay attention to that and some of these guys, I'm sure, Brizzy Breach, I think, is a regular for these limits. I'm not sure if Vera 15 is. This is actually a really, really nice table. This Leadbelly Dan I have marked, which means he's a weaker player, or I have him identified as a weaker player. However, at this point, there could be a mismark I've done or something. I don't have a wealth of evidence that really points to that. His numbers look pretty good, actually. Here at the 7 deuce, I'm going to take a little break and we'll see what he does. If he checks to me, I'll probably bet like $5 and hope to take it down. Happy to kind of take a short break there. So we'll probably just finish out the remainder of the free hands here and wrap it up here. Here with the Jack 5, I'll also just let him have it. Not a strong hand. But we've got some good general poker theory stuff, and one thing, with me being a new DragTheBar coach, I want to, I can't express enough, and I've expressed in my other videos, is that, utilize me. I'm going to be around in the forums a lot, and I'm looking forward to helping you guys out, so please take advantage of that. And here at the 8-10 suited, actually I'll just fold. It's a couple of short stackers to go through, and this chip pawnage is kind of loose. I'd rather stay out of it. And here at the Ace-Jack suited, I'm just going to go ahead and call. And I'd be willing to kind of play for stacks with this guy if I catch, a flush draw or a top pair type of hand. I caught neither. I caught a backdoor flush and an overcard. It's not, he's probably going to bet $25-30, and I don't really, I could make a tiny raise here to, really force him to have some kind of queen, really, to continue. And but I tend to not try and get overly involved with bluffing weaker opponents because they tend to not be too inclined to fold. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it up right here. Against a regular or something, I might have called there with the backdoor flush in the over, and or maybe made a play on the flop. In fact, I probably do one of the two almost every time. I probably don't fold that flop too often, because it is a pretty decent raising opportunity and a pretty decent, I've got some potential to make, a top pair or back into a flush or even back into a straight. If I catch something like any king or a 10 on the turn, also gives me a straight draw, an inside straight draw. And so if I can, there's a lot of things to look forward to. I could also call the flop there, and if a spade hits the turn, I can kind of rep spades. But this is all predicated on people having the ability to read hands, or the ability to kind of put you on hands. This type of guy, I think he's just going to, if he has a top pair, he's going to go with it. And if he probably has any decent pocket pair, even like jacks or tens, he'll probably go with it. And so I don't have a whole lot to, I can't make plays and bank on him reading my actions a certain way. I just, he's somewhat of an unknown quantity. Doesn't seem to be much of a folder, so I just opted to fold it right there. But certainly not a flop I would fold against an opponent I had some more information on. So at the 8-6 suited, I raised from later position here, or excuse me, from hijack, and I got re-raised, and so you know what? I'm actually going to toss in a 4-bet and try and take it down right here. He might, he's new to the table. He might see my pretty active numbers and 3-bet me pretty lightly. So we'll try and take it down, and if he has a hand and chips it in, then so be it. So it worked there, which was kind of nice. And a lot of that was based on my reading. He had it, if we notice here, he used the auto top-up feature, so as soon as his stack went beneath $400, it auto topped up. His numbers look pretty good. Everything indicates that this guy's a pretty strong player, and I probably mismarked him at some point. It's also possible because that I marked him 2 or 3 years ago when maybe he wasn't a good player, and then he practiced hard and now is a good player. So A lot of these reads are old as well. And here at the 8-7 suited under the gun, I don't mind opening the hand like this. I think it's certainly a reasonable opening hand. And it looks like we're going to get a pretty good multi-way pot. We flop 2 overs and a gut shot to the nuts, but it isn't the type of flop where you're going to get a whole lot of folds. And you know, that being said, I'll probably make a small little stab and see if maybe, you know, I can take down the pot. It doesn't need to work too often, especially when you consider when they just call the flop. I can spike a 6 and things can get real fun. So he just calls the flop. Yeah, I might put him on a hand like pocket 3s, you know, pocket 7s, you know, a hand like, you know, maybe a flush draw, stuff like that. And anyway, none of these hands I think will call all 3 barrels, and you know, if the board keeps breaking off. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with my bet here and try and take down the pot on the turn. And so he called the turn as well, and I'm gonna go ahead and triple barrel this and hope that he has a hand that just can't call the river. You know, if he has spades, or you know, maybe at this point a hand like pocket 7s is going to give it up. Maybe I'd rather just put him to the test. My bluff, you know, doesn't need to work more than, I don't know, probably 40% of the time, and we're able to take it down there through sheer aggression. So. You know, I just didn't identify any hands that were thrilled with calling that river there based on his range. Certainly there's a lot of busted draws out there, and he might be more inclined to look me up with a marginal type hand, but I did bet into 2 opponents on the flop. I've been betting into him out of position all the time. The board was really safe on the river and would really give a hand like, you know, a jack or an overpair a lot of confidence. I just didn't see him making that call so often that it would be an unprofitable bluff for me, so I just went ahead and did it. But anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I look forward to talking with you guys in the forums. Look forward to getting to know everybody, being a new coach at DragTheBar.com. And I just am really excited to be making videos and interacting with you guys. So please take advantage of that. And good luck with your games.